魔を下す戦雑魚ども邪魔をするな。消えろ。くだらない。取るに足らない。わめくがいい。
Hey guys, today we are going to talk about the latest 5-star character in Genshin Impact. He is one of the 5 Yakshas, also known as the Guardian Yaksha of Liyue, and his name is Xiao, the Vigilant Yaksha. He is a 5-star character released in 1.3 version of Genshin Impact, and he's arguably one of the most famous characters in Genshin due to his lore, playstyle, and he's just a cool character overall. So without further ado, let's jump into the character's overview. So now we take a look at Xiao's talents, and his first talent is going to be his normal attack, Whirlwind Thrust, which he performs 6 consecutive spear strikes, while his charge attack does an upward thrust. And of course, the plunging attack that allows him to deal massive damage to the opponent. And an amazing feat about this is that Xiao does not take damage from plunging attack regardless of how high he jumped. His second talent will allow him to dash forward and deal animal damage to opponents in his way. It starts with 2 charges at C0 and 3 at C1. Particles will also be generated when the opponent is hit by this ability. And finally, we come down to his ult, which is the Bane of all Evil, where Xiao puts on a mask and his jumping ability, attack AoE and damage all got boosted, and his attack damage will also be converted into animal damage. At the same time, Xiao will constantly lose HP when his ult is up. Now normally, if you are a C0 Xiao, you would do the combo which you jump and plunge. And you could also mix your normal attack between each plunging attack to utilize his damage. If you are a C6 Xiao, things get a bit different, where after you do your first plunging attack, you will actually do Dash's attack to utilize your damage, and we will cover that at Constellation part. For Xiao's passive talents, his first passive talents will be Xiao getting a damage boost of 5% for every 5 seconds his ult is up. And for his second passive talent, Xiao will deal more damage for the second dash after the first dash, and the effect lasts for 7 seconds and a max of 3 stacks. The last passive is just stamina consumption decrease, which is gonna help in exploring. Now we are gonna take a look at Xiao's constellation and is it worth it to get his constellation. Starting from C1, it increases Xiao's dashing ability charge by 1, which is pretty good considering that you can deal more damage by now, and extra dash means extra particles for him. So for C2, Xiao's energy recharge will increase by 25% when he's not on the field but in the party. Now for this, I think that is not that necessary for him to get, because if you are running Xiao in your team, normally you will want him to be on the field as long as possible, so this is not really necessary as a constellation for him. So for C3, it's just level increase for his dash ability. So now for C4, for Xiao, when Xiao HP falls below 50%, he gains a 100% defense bonus. It can be good in some situation where Xiao needs to finish off his opponent as quickly as possible while he's at low health, but normally when Xiao's HP is dropped below 50%, we will swap back to the healer unit to activate his healing ability to heal Xiao up. So for me, C4 is also not that necessary. So now we come down to C5, which is also just level increasing of his ult. So we move on to the C6 now. C6 is interesting and for me it's pretty good. So what it does is, under the effects of his ult, after hitting 2 opponents with his plunging attack, it gives him 1 charge of his dash. For the next second, he can use the dash without ignoring his cooldown. So it can be pretty good if you are facing 2 or more enemies, like for example in situation like Domain or Abyss. This will boost Xiao's damage output by a lot. But if you are facing enemy, let's say world bosses like the Dragon, the Wolf or Tartaglia, this constellation is not gonna work. So yeah, that's all about his constellation. Now, do I think that the constellations for Xiao's are really worth it? Well, as a free-to-play player, if you get C1 Xiao, you should call it for the day, because C2, 3, 4, 5 for Xiao is just not necessary, and for C6, which is the only useful constellation aside from C1, is also just conditionally good, where if you were to use it in Abyss and Domain, it could be good, but if you are facing a single target like world bosses, it might not be as useful. So for you to spend $1,000 on the banner just to get C6 is not really worth it, because C0 Xiao is just good to go. If you want to get his constellation as a free-to-play, you can get his C1 and that's just it. So I think that if you're a free-to-play player, don't worry about his constellation. Xiao as C0 is really strong already, and if you can get C1, that will be good too, but without C1, that's fine too, because Xiao is ready to go at C0. So now we are gonna take a look at Xiao's weapon selection. If you are a free-to-play player, the 4 stars craftable weapons are all pretty good, and the best in my opinion will be the prototype grudge, as it gives you 42 base attack and energy recharge as secondary stat, and its effect increase your normal and charge attack for 12 seconds after using elemental skill is just good. For Crescent Pike, it gives you base attack of 44, which is pretty high, but as a secondary stat, it gives you physical damage bonus, which is not that ideal for Xiao, as we will rely on Xiao's plunging attack after his ult, which convert his attack into animal attack, which physical damage bonus just don't work with him. But it could still be a good weapon regardless, but I will pick the prototype grudge all day. I will pass on Dragon's Bane and Dragon Spine Spear because of their relatively low attack. So for Vonis could also be a very good 4-star option, as it gives you 44 base attack and energy recharge substat. Its effect gives you 6 energy after crit hit, which is just nice. For the more pay-to-play players, you have 2 4-star options, which are Deathmatch from the Battle Pass and Blackleaf from Paimon Shop. Deathmatch gives you 41 attack and crit rate, and its effect is just good in all situations. When you're facing 2 opponents or more, your attack is increased by a certain percentage and defense is also increased by a certain percentage. If there are less than 2 opponents nearby, attack is increased by a certain percentage as well. The Blackleaf gives you 42 attack and crit damage as substat that can be good for Xiao, and this spear is exceptionally good in facing large groups of enemies, as after defeating an enemy, it boosts your attack by a certain percent. For the 5-star spears, I personally think that every one of them is very good. Aesthetically and generally speaking, the Jade Wing Spear is probably the best weapon for Xiao, as it has a very high base attack of 48 and it gives you crit rate for the secondary stat, and the effect increases your attack on hit, which is really good, and it increases your overall DPS. But if we look at other 5 stars, they are all pretty good as well. For example, the Skyward Spine that gives you 48 attack and energy recharge that Xiao is absolutely in need of. The effect boosts your crit rate by a bit and attack speed by a certain amount, and the extra damage from the Vacuum Blade is just good. And then lastly, we have the Vortex Vanquisher with the base attack of 46 and attack percentage as a base stat is going to skyrocket your Xiao's attack by a lot. And when he is protected by a character that can proc shield, for example Zhongli, Diona, Xingyan, and also a lot more, he is going to have increased attack and also have the shield on him enhanced that also allows him to stay on field for a long time. So if you have any of the 5-star spear, don't hesitate to use it on him, they are all pretty good. If you don't, the 4-star craftables are good to go as well. There is a program that is gonna come out later that is called the Staff of Homer, and I think that will be a good weapon for Xiao too because of its base attack of 46, and it also gives you a secondary stat of crit damage, which is really good for Xiao, and then his effect is going to increase Xiao's HP by 20% and also give him an attack bonus based on his HP. Keep in mind that these are the current info that we got from this spear, and these are subject to change. If the info we got from this spear are not changing, I believe that this is a really good weapon for Xiao. For the artifact sets for Xiao, undoubtedly the Gladiator 2-piece and Viridescent 2-piece is going to work best on him. The Flower and Feathers main stat is not going to change, which is HP and flat attack. For the Hourglass, you will want the attack percentage as its main stat and animal damage bonus at the main stat for his Goblet, and then crit damage as the main stat of his Circlet. Now for the team comp of Xiao, generally speaking, we should have an animal character that acts as a battery for him, and then a healer, and then the last one could be anyone that can be beneficial for Xiao without actually being on the field. So right now I'm running Xiao with Sucrose, which acts as a battery for him, and then I'll run a Bennett for his ult, which boosts Xiao's attack while also having the ability to heal Xiao. And the last character I will have is Zhongli, which his shield is just really good for Xiao when he's on the field, and then after using his shield, is going to reduce the opponent's elemental resistance, which is good for Xiao as well. So this is the team that I'm currently running for Xiao, but if you don't have these characters on your team, you can easily swap them with your character. For example, Sucrose, you can swap her with Jean, Venti, or even Animal Traveler. For Bennett slot, you can swap him with any healer such as Barbara, Chichi, and so on. For Zhongli slot, you can literally swap him with any character that can be beneficial for Xiao without actually being on the field. So, for example, Fischl that can proc Oz on the field and deal additional damage, or Xingqiu that can deal damage without being on the field with his Elemental Burst, and Diona with her shield is just good, and also Albedo, who is overall a good support for anyone. And if you have Albedo at C4, he's going to increase Xiao's plunging attack by 30%, which is going to be crazy on Xiao's attack. But if you don't have him at C4, it's fine too. He's just a good support that can be fit in to the team. Overall, I think Xiao is an amazing character because of how cool his attack animation is and how fun he is to play with. I have always wanted to get him since I started playing Genshin Impact, and his performance in 1.3 really amazes me. I personally think that he's one of the best DPS units in the game, if not the best. People might argue that Ganyu is stronger than Xiao, blah blah blah, but for me, every character is strong and unique the way they are. Also keep in mind that this is a PvE game, so it doesn't really matter. Just go for it, whatever character you like, build him, use him. So that's all from me for this Xiao's guide. Thank you guys for watching, and if you do enjoy the video, drop a like, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more upcoming video. And peace! Fearless.